What's the deal, everybody? It's your boy Shane G. We are back with another episode of Politics as usual, right here on the Ethos Media Network. Please, as always, make sure you like, you share, and you subscribe for all of the latest content. Now, what we're going to be discussing today is the debate that took place last week. So, I've actually been avoiding doing this. I didn't want to talk about this just because the main takeaways from it ended up being the silliness, obviously, which is what I knew was going to happen. But just my overall thoughts on the debate before I get into the specifics of the things that were said. um for one, just off of a general impression, if I didn't know anything about politics, if I didn't know anything about either of the candidates, and I just watched that debate, Kamala slaughtered them. Like, it's not even close. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even. They were competing in two different worlds. So I don't. Yeah, that was that was really bad. Um, if I'm just looking at it again with no information about either candidate, I'm walking in blind, I would say Kamala kind of smoked Donald Trump's boots, like not even really close. Um, what I will also say is if you do pay attention and you do sort of follow the day-to-day politics, and you follow everything that's going on a more long-term basis, what's going on in between the presidential cycles, all of that kind of stuff, if you're one of those people, then you would also probably have the takeaway that those hosts, the framing of the questions was very slanted. um Not the whole debate, but the phrasing of the questions towards Donald Trump was definitely more in one direction, and the phrasing of the questions towards Kamala were definitely a lot softer, I would say. They allowed her to explain herself a lot more, things like that. Whereas with Trump, the way they were asking the questions were like, so here's some bullshit that you did. Do you still agree with this? You know what I'm saying? It was almost more like that. Whereas, the way that they phrased things towards Kamala was definitely um in a way to where she was able to sort of explain her way out of certain things that she, maybe has said or done in the past that people disagreed with. So, those are just my initial thoughts. I'll say, if I'm walking in blind, Kamala smacked Trump around. It was, it's not even close. But I will also say that the framing of the questions at times was very biased in Kamala Harris's favor. So now what surprised me is I thought initially that there was going to be one Fox host and one ABC host to sort of kind of balance that out and sort of prevent that from happening. But that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like they were both ABC hosts. I'm pretty sure. I don't really watch ABC, but I'm pretty sure that both of them were ABC hosts. So that was interesting to me. I did appreciate the fact that, they were somewhat fact checking on the spot. So yeah, overall, I think it was needed. And it definitely shows a stark contrast, at least in the presentation of the two candidates. You know what I'm saying? So if that is important to you, the way that our president represents us, abroad or, in speeches and things like that, if eloquence in your political candidates matters to you, then this is a pretty good example of what you're going to get on either side. So with all that being said, let's go over each individual policy that they discussed. I have the notes. Yeah, let's see what we can actually break down here. So the first thing they discussed was the economy. So Trump says he did great during the pandemic. He created jobs. Kamala Harris says that Goldman Sachs co-signs her economic plan and does not approve of Donald Trump's as far as rebuilding the economy. Trump's plan will include higher taxes on imports, which will cause higher prices for citizens. And Trump denies that this will cause higher prices. So there's a few things there. Kamala Harris says that Goldman Sachs co-signs her economic plan. To me, that's not good. The reason why I say that's not good is because Goldman Sachs are the people that are responsible for, the economic housing crash that took place. They're one of the parties responsible. It's the big banks in general, but they're one of the biggest. So big banks are the reason that the housing industry crashed, 15, 16 years ago. And the reason why the housing bubble is, the way it is now, big banks are a big part of the reason why the economy is in the downfall that it's in, because of all the unfettered capitalism and all the rules that they're essentially allowed to break whenever they want to. We have to remember Kamala Harris was either the attorney general, I believe she was the attorney general when all those, I believe it was 5 million families were illegally removed out of their homes during Barack Obama's presidency. A lot of that took place. A lot of those families were in California. And so Goldman Sachs and, different banks were actually responsible for illegally removing people from their homes, foreclosing on people's homes so that way they could sell them at a higher price, to what we're seeing now is businesses, but back then it would just be, wealthier people or sometimes businesses, corporations that are buying up houses is what I mean when I say businesses. So yeah, let me be specific. I mean, corporations. And they were foreclosing on people's houses illegally so that way they could sell their houses, and get the profit. So this was the Democrats that was doing that. So to say that that Goldman Sachs co-signed your economic plan and doesn't approve of Trump's, to me, that's, again, if you're in the know, that's not really a shot at Trump. Now, I'm not saying that Trump's economic plan is going to be better. You know what I mean? I don't feel that that's the case. We know how he does with his tax cuts and how that is messing with the economy currently. So I'm not going to say it's a wash, but I will say Goldman Sachs co-signing your economic plan does not give me any confidence in your economic plan. I'll say that. Higher taxes on imports, which will cause higher prices for citizens. That was the debate that's being made about Trump's plan. He's saying that this will not cause higher prices for citizens. All it's going to do is increase manufacturing in the United States, create more jobs that way. And there you go. Now, that could be how it happens. But again, the economic elites don't necessarily want that to be the case. It's not that it's cheaper for them to export the labor in other countries and then import the goods, because then they're paying less per hour per employee. They have to pay us a minimum wage here at least. And most places are, trying to, on some level, keep up with inflation or, whatever the case may be. So since that's, keeping up with the cost of living, essentially. So if you can't keep up with the cost of living, or since you're trying to pay competitive wages, rather, to keep up with the cost of living, it's actually cheaper to just not hire Americans at all and hire, people in other countries who don't have minimum wage laws, or their minimum wage laws are a lot more lax or a lot less, things like that. So the big business owners don't necessarily want that to be the case, because it's cheaper for them to do it the way that they're doing it. That's why they're doing it this way. If it was cheaper for them to hire Americans and do it that way, they would just do that. So it will cause higher prices if Americans are, if they're going to force corporations essentially to create a new labor market here or rebuild the labor market here. What's going to end up happening is, because corporations are greedy and the people who run corporations are greedy, they're not going to want to sacrifice any of their profits whatsoever, even if they're doing well. They don't want to sacrifice profit. You have to make more and more profit every quarter. Otherwise, people lose their jobs in high up positions. That's really how it works. So if you're not making more profit every quarter, even if you make the same profit next quarter as you did last quarter, that's not good. You need to be making more profit. So how are you going to make more profit if you have to pay people more money per hour to do the job that you're paying them to do? The answer to that is you charge more for the goods or the services that you're producing. So if you're charging more for the goods and the services in order to continue to make that profit that you have to make quarter after quarter, then yes, ultimately that results in citizens paying higher prices. That is how that works. Now, whether or not that's a good thing or not overall for our economy, that's can be debated. It might hurt us in the short run, but then in the long run, there's more money flowing through the economy and more people are doing better because there are more jobs that are created and more goods that are being manufactured and purchased within the United States. And then we can ship out goods to other places, and make money by exporting goods. So, you could, if you look at it as a long-term thing, there is an argument that that is better for the economy, actually. But to say that it will not cause higher prices, at least in the short term, is just ridiculous. So that's their overall points that they were making as far as the economy. Now, they were talking about jobs, of course, who's created more jobs or less jobs, the Biden administration or the Trump administration. So I do have an article from Forbes here that will hopefully give us the information that we're looking for. So let's take a look. So Trump and Harris spar over jobs at the debate. Here are the facts. This is from Derek Saul. So former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris feuded in Tuesday's debate over job creation, ever a hot button topic ahead of presidential elections. While the labor market has performed better during Joe Biden's presidency than it did under Trump in terms of total job creation and unemployment, that's far from the whole story. Okay, so just raw numbers, Joe Biden has had less unemployment and more job creation than Donald Trump. Okay, so here are the key facts. Here are the key takeaways, because we're not going to go through this entire article. At the highest level, Biden holds a massive advantage over Trump. The United States added about 16 million jobs during Biden's first 43 months in office, compared to a 2.7 million contraction during Trump's presidency, according to total non-farm payrolls, the most cited measure of total employment, which encompasses most American workers. So if I'm reading that correctly, they're saying that Biden added 16 million jobs and Trump lost 2.7 in the first 43 months. Similarly, the unemployment rate rose 1.7 percentage points from 4.7 to 6.4 under Trump, and it declined 2.2 percentage points under Biden to the latest reading of 4.2%. So what they're saying there is it went up 1.7% unemployment, meaning there were 1.7% of less workers. and then Biden declined the unemployment rate by 2.2%, meaning that number went back up as far as the amount of workers. So now those numbers are very debatable as well, depending on the source, depending on how they count unemployment. Are they counting everyone that's unemployed? Are they counting underemployed people? Are they only counting people who are currently working for work right this moment? There's always ways that so that's always sort of an interesting number and statistic to kind of deal with. But if they're using the same, metrics, it doesn't really matter what the number is, as far as if unemployment is actually 10% or it's actually 20%, they're only saying it's 4%. That doesn't matter right now for the sake of this discussion, only because we're comparing the two people. So the numbers might be wrong, but that's okay for right now. So, um, as far as the percentages and the total unemployment, because again, we're only looking at the comparison between Biden's unemployment and Trump's. Now, if the numbers are wrong based on the ratio of comparing those two, then that's a different thing. But as far as, if it's like, oh, unemployment isn't only 4.2%, it's actually 5.8%. And when it was like that, that doesn't matter. I hope that's clear. Hopefully you get what I'm trying to say. Anyway, however, the gross data paints a wholly incomplete picture of the labor market strength under both presidents, as the COVID-19 pandemic upended the global economy beginning in 2020, causing U.S. unemployment to briefly spike to a record 14.8% in April 2020 after a whopping 22 million worker contraction. After a whopping 22 million worker contraction from February 2020 to April 2020. So that means 22 million people lost their jobs in that time because of COVID. So they are accounting for that in the numbers as far as why Trump lost, the amount of jobs that he did under his presidency and why Biden was able to recover so many. So COVID skewed the numbers negatively in Trump's direction and skewed them positively into Biden's direction, as the next point addresses. So that skewed Trump's number negatively and Biden's positively as the labor market returned to relative normalcy following the unprecedented shock, with recent data indicating the Biden era expansion is slowing down considerably. See, so there was a spike after COVID, after everyone was like, all right, COVID's done. If you get COVID, it is what it is. Like, just, sit at home for a couple of days, get yourself better. You'll be all right. We're treating it like the flu now. Like, once we got to that point and everybody was back outside and businesses were back open and stuff, it spiked the employment rate. So that's not necessarily because of anything Biden did other than say, all right, let's get back to work. You know what I'm saying? He didn't really do anything to make that happen. It wasn't anything policy wise that was like, oh, this is exploding job growth and job creation. It wasn't that. It was just COVID was over. So let's keep that in mind as well. So, in fact, the first 3 quarters of Trump's tenure were marked by a remarkably strong job market, with non-farm payrolls growing by about 7 million between January 2017 and February 2020, and unemployment declining over the same period from 4.7% to 3.5%. At that time, the lowest mark since 1969, later surpassed by January and April 2023's 3.4%. So until COVID, what they're saying is until COVID, Trump was actually doing his thing when it came to job creation. So it's not a lie to say that he was doing a good job. He actually was, but COVID stopped all of that. So if you take all of that consideration, realistically, they're about even if you're looking at Biden and Trump. Now, we don't know what Kamala would do because she hasn't been the president. But if we're looking at just these two and comparing, if we're gluing Kamala and Joe together and then Trump's over here, the records are basically even when it comes to the economy, job growth. Again, the tax cuts, crazy. Like that was a Trump thing. That didn't help anybody except the elites. So, we're not really happy with that. But as far as it goes with job creation, which is mainly what they were speaking to, it's roughly, they're kind of the same. So with everything considered, they're not that far apart. I'll say it like that. Okay. Moving on. The next point that they brought up was abortion. So Trump was proud to kill Roe v. Wade. He says he is the most pro-life president ever. And he says that he voted for a 6-week limit because, quote, Democrats want to have abortions in the 9th month and they want to kill the baby after it's born. But he says that he believes in exceptions for rape, incest, or to save the life of the mother, and ultimately wants to have the states decide. So he said ultimately the reason why he was against Roe versus Wade is because it was a federal thing. He says every state has a different culture and every state feels slightly different about the issue of abortion. So he wants those states to be able to decide for themselves rather than the federal government coming in and saying, hey, blanket rule, everybody has to allow this. Now, while I feel that's a shitty argument, okay, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's a stupid argument. Like, why? Why is it better for the states to be able to decide? Because culturally, maybe in Kentucky, they don't like abortion, right? That doesn't stop the fact that there are people in Kentucky who may need an abortion. So what that it's a stupid argument, you know what I mean? It's just dumb. Like, I don't understand. It's almost like you're saying, okay, well, this is a state that, you know, is anti-war and this state is pro-war. So the anti-war state, if we get invaded, we're not going to protect you guys because you guys don't agree with the military. Like, what? No, that doesn't make sense. Like, I still live in the country. I should get the same rights, you know? So that's his take. He also admitted, which was crazy to me, that he hasn't actually spoken to JD Vance about this issue because JD Vance, I believe, does not believe in abortion for any case. He does not believe in exceptions whatsoever. Trump is outwardly saying he does believe in these exceptions, and he says he hasn't spoken with his vice president about this topic, which is a huge topic. So that's interesting. Kamala basically says that she wants to reinstate Roe versus Wade federally. And then she said something very interesting on the next topic, which I picked up on immediately because I immediately thought, well, I could say the same thing about y'all with abortion, but the issue of immigration. So Kamala stated that she has prosecuted criminal organizations that are international and she stopped several types of trafficking. So she says she's actually, you know, put her money where her mouth is, for the lack of a better term, when it comes to the issue of immigration, locking up dangerous criminals from outside of the country who are coming in to wreak havoc, yada, yada, yada. Then she said he's preferring to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And while that's an excellent slogan and that's an excellent statement to make, that applies to the Democrats as well on so many issues, which we're going to get to. But again, the issue of abortion, y'all had since 1963 or whenever, 1964 or whatever year Roe versus Wade was. Y'all have had since then to codify it in a law, and you chose not to. You heard the Republicans every 4 years campaigning on getting rid of Roe versus Wade, and you didn't take them serious. And then they did it. And now you're like, oh, well, now you need to put us back in place so we can have a chance to get it back. And it's like, yeah, but you could have made it so that never could have happened. But instead, you guys just kept running on the issue. It's the same thing you do with Medicare for all. Everyone deserves access to health care, which is a buzzword. That's a slimy buzzword to let you know that they're not really in favor of Medicare for all, which is the one and only solution. But they're like, we don't, everyone should have access to healthcare and everyone deserves healthcare and nobody should go bankrupt for drugs and, or for, prescription drugs or for surgeries and blah, 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 blah. And everyone says all the right stuff. And then as soon as it's time to actually do something to try to get Medicare for all, even voted on, not even passed, we're not naive. We know there's not probably enough votes to actually get it passed, but get it on the record. Get some people to vote for it and explain why they're against it. So that way we as voters can make a decision based on that. But y'all won't even have a vote on it. And so that's running on the problem, running on the issue instead of fixing the problem or fixing the issue. Everyone now knows, based on the amount of money that we send to Ukraine and the amount of money that we send to Israel all the time, and if you were paying attention before that, the amount of money that we spend on the military every year, everyone knows we have more than enough money to afford Medicare for all. you're running on a problem instead of fixing the problem. So that was very interesting when she said that to me. I was like, I like that quote, but that applies way more to you guys than, anyone's going to say right now on the stage. But that was my first thought instantly. Like, wow, the Democrats, that's what you guys do. I've been saying that for years about y'all. So moving on, though. So on this topic of immigration, of course, they argued about who has better rallies. Trump, of course, famously said that the Haitian immigrants in Springfield are eating the dogs and eating the cats, eating people's pets. Even though the city manager there says there is absolutely no evidence of any animals being harmed at all. And then JD Vance actually came out on CNN and said that he made up the story because immigrants are actually just doing really a lot of damage to the people and the residents there, because of course they're all rapists and murderers. They're not just people asylum seeking or looking for a better life. They're all criminals and rapists and murderers and robbers, and they're terrorizing the townspeople. The good, white townspeople of Springfield are being terrorized, by these dirty dreadlock Haitians who are eating their animals. He said he made all that up because he just wanted to bring attention to the fact that the immigrants are terrorizing them. Like, he said this on TV, on CNN. Look it up. JD Vance, the vice president nominee, said that he made that story up, and Trump just ran with it. So Trump also says that all of the criminals in the world are leaving their countries and coming here, and it's all because of the Democrats. That's what Trump said. This one was so all over the place. That's why it's hard for me to actually give you guys what they really said. Kamala then spoke about him giving himself total immunity from the law if he becomes president, and also suspending the Constitution. She brought that up as well, and brought up Russia. And then he retorted with Russiagate was fake, which it was. But what Trump was trying to do the whole time was he was trying to tie the issue of immigration to every other policy that the Democrats are not good at, because right now that's their weakest policy, is immigration. On both sides, everyone is basically like, all right, you guys are not good on this issue. So his strategy, whoever's team was, they were saying, you need to link every other issue to immigration. So when we talk about the economy, you need to talk about the economy is not good, and it's because of the immigration problem. When we talk about abortion, you need to talk about how we wouldn't have to worry about so many people needing abortions if all of these immigrants weren't coming over here raping people. So that's what he was trying to do. If I'm giving him the kindest interpretation possible, that's what it looked like he was trying to do. But he just kept saying immigration and they're just terrible and they're horrible, and like he wasn't being specific enough in tying it to the actual issues that he was speaking to. So even though Russiagate was fake, I'm sure that he could have made that make sense somehow, but he was just kind of, throwing mud at the wall, and whatever stuck. That was kind of his strategy the whole time. So then they did ask her about her policy position changes, specifically with the issue of fracking, and we're going to get to fracking here in a moment. But actually, first, we're going to look at we're not going to look at anything first. We're going to move right on actually to the policy position changes. So Kamala, they were speaking about fracking. And just for those of you who don't know what that is, this is what fracking is. Fracking, or hydraulic fracturing, is a technique used to extract oil and natural gas from deep rock formations. The process involves drilling. A well is drilled vertically or at an angle. Casing, steel pipes are inserted into the well. Cementing, The space between the casing and the rock is filled with cement. Fracturing, a mixture of water, sand, and chemicals is pumped into the well at high pressure, causing the rocks to crack. And then fluid return. After the injection process, the fluid returns to the surface through the wellbore. This fluid is called flowback or produced water. Now, what is the problem with fracking? Because I feel like both of them are actually terrible on this issue. What's the problem with fracking, you might ask? And you can read along with me. Fracking is banned in some countries, including Germany, France, Spain, and Australia. In other countries like Brazil and Argentina, some authorities ban fracking while others allow it. So fracking has been criticized for its potential environmental and health risks, including water contamination, which we've all dealt and seen a lot of. You know, shout out to Flint. They're going 12 years now, is it? Dirty water? Still no good. Nobody's talking about it anymore. I haven't forgot. Flint's water still bold. Air pollution. Everybody's worried about climate change. Everybody talks about, you know, how much harder it is to breathe outside and smog, and fracking causes that. Earthquakes. Been more earthquakes? Fracking causes them because you're messing with the chemicals and the natural formations that already exist under the ground. And then lastly, climate change. Fracking releases methane, a greenhouse gas, and opens up new fossil fuel deposits. So it's just shit that's basically been underground for thousands, millions of years. We're releasing it back into the atmosphere. And these are things that haven't been in the atmosphere since dinosaurs were around. Shit like that. Like, that's not good for us. You know, the chemical makeup of the atmosphere is very different than what it was when those chemicals that are stuck underground are being released. Totally different. It's not good. So, last couple of things here. When asked about the peaceful transition of power, Donald Trump went on the attack. That made me laugh. He was not doing anything peaceful. He was like, nah, you know what? None of that shit that happened on January 6th was my fault. It was actually Nancy Pelosi's fault because she didn't send out, the proper security protocol. All I did was show up for a speech. Definitely said that there's a lot of people in the current administration that should be in prison for various crimes. He was just calling them all criminals kind of ad hominem, but not really discussing what the crimes were. On this channel we have, and you can definitely go back and check those videos out. But Kamala says the opposite, of course. Then Trump goes back to immigration. He says that the White House can just close the border if they want, and they don't need Congress. And he says that's what he will do. Again, this is a question about the peaceful transition of power. Went right back to illegal immigration. He says illegal immigrants are able to vote, and that's why the Democrats want open borders. Now, actually, the Democrats want open borders because they're lacking military recruitment. And I actually have a video I can show you to prove that. So give me 1 second here.
The Army and Air Force are looking to immigrants to overcome recruiting shortfalls. They've ramped up their marketing, including on social media, to entice legal immigrants to enlist. They're also using recruiters with similar backgrounds to appeal to potential recruits. But the biggest draw for migrants is the promise of a fast track to citizenship, plus jobs and education benefits. Both the Army and the Air Force have said they will not meet their recruiting goals this year.
So, now she said legal. I'll give her that. She said legal. Not, and I wish I could find it. There's a clip out there of a representative on the floor of Congress saying that we need to allow more illegal immigrants in, or we need to allow for more immigration because of what she just said. Our recruiting goals. We're not making our recruiting goals. But these people, they're looking for a way into the country anyway. So why don't we just use them. That's what this is. So that's the real reason. If you really want to know where all this immigration is coming from and what the issue is and why they're allowing it, at least for some people, that's why. Trying to recruit for our military, baby. So, that's what Trump, but Trump says that it's because they're able to vote, and that's why the Democrats want them over here. So then he goes on a rant about how Kamala got no votes in 2020. Biden got way more votes than Kamala did. Kamala got no votes in 2020. Joe Biden actually hates Kamala Harris now because, you know, collectively they all decided to remove him and place Kamala in that spot. And now she's getting all the shine and the love and all of that. So Biden's actually secretly pissed at Kamala. And so this is what he chose to talk about when asked about the transition of power, if he would do it peacefully or if he would, you know, deny the election results and all that kind of stuff. So Israel, Palestine. So again, both of them are shitty on this issue. Kamala basically did a both sides answer, you know. She says that Israel, of course, has the right to defend itself, but at the same time, too many Palestinians are being killed. She said she wants a two-state peace deal and then says Israel can defend itself against Iran and its affiliates. Trump says Russia would have never entered Ukraine if he was president. And if he's not president in another 2 years, quote, there will not be another Israel. There will not be an Israel in another 2 years, is what he said. He says because the Democrats removed sanctions on Iran, they are now a rich country that will fund the destruction of Israel. So that's his opinion. So he's totally just pro-Israel all the way. Like whatever we got to do to, you know, hook up Israel, that's what we're going to do. Kamala is at least pretending to do the both sides thing, even though, you know, if you know her record realistically, we know they're the same on this issue. She's going to say a little bit more of the right stuff when it comes to, oh, we shouldn't be shitting on Palestinians and, you know, we can't be just letting them get killed and blah, blah, blah. You know, good on you. But, you know, it's performative at the end of the day. You're totally team Netanyahu. We know this. Again, if you go back to my previous video breaking down Kamala Harris's record, it's very clear where her loyalties stand. So, but Trump is no better on this issue. Like, this is a wash. They're both really shitty on Israel. So, moving on, Trump says that he will settle the Ukraine and Russia conflict before he takes office if he wins the election. Kamala calls Trump weak on foreign policy, but then said he wants to be a dictator. And I was like, okay, well, it can't be both. Either he's weak and he's soft and he's letting America get run over and all of this, or he's a brutal dictator and he's violent and he's a hawk, and it can't be both. So, like, what do you mean he's weak on foreign policy? He dropped just as many bombs as all the other presidents. He didn't end any wars. He dropped the biggest, the mother of all bombs, it was called, within like his first month on Afghanistan. He didn't end any of the wars. He was saber rattling with fucking Kim Jong-un over in North Korea. All of his policies that he did actually were anti-Russia. If you really look on paper, they didn't help Russia at all. So was he weak on foreign policy, or does he want to be a dictator? You know, you got to pick your attack a little bit better there. Trump also says that he doesn't say how he would fix the Israel-Palestine conflict. He just keeps repeating that the Democrats will destroy Israel. When it comes to Ukraine, which is one topic I agreed with Trump on, because he didn't fall for their line of the way they were asking the question was bullshit, and he didn't fall for it. So I'll actually give him props on that. So with Ukraine, Trump says he will settle the conflict by meeting with the leaders of both countries, and it's in the U.S. best interest to end the war. Whereas Kamala just straight up supports Ukraine and says, we will keep funding them forever. Like, we're not going to stop because there's no way they're going to beat Russia. So we're just going to keep funding Ukraine and let them fight and make them think they have a chance, even though they really don't. So that's Kamala's stance. Trump says he would meet with both of them. And the bullshit way that they were questioning, they said, they kept asking him, do you think it'll be in the United States' best interest for Ukraine to win the war? And the answer they were looking for is yes, it'll be in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win the war. Trump kept saying it's in the U.S. best interest to end the war, which is the correct answer. It's not in our best interest for Ukraine to win, because that's impossible. That can't happen unless we start World War III, literally. We would have to get involved, and then if we get involved, then China's going to get involved on Russia's side. Iran's going to get involved on Russia's side. Europe's going to get involved on our side. That's World War III. Right there. You just made it happen. So Trump actually is correct on this issue. Moving on, Afghanistan. Kamala says that she supported the decision to withdraw from Afghanistan and says that Trump set them up for failure, essentially, because he was negotiating directly with the Taliban, and he even invited them to Camp David and agreed to release 5,000 terrorists back to them in exchange, for a safe withdrawal and, all that kind of stuff. Trump admits, yes, I was negotiating directly with the Taliban, but that's because they're the ones who were killing our soldiers. It's not like it was their government. It's not like I could talk to a president. You know what I mean? The Taliban has more power than their government over there. You know what I'm saying? Like, they are functionally the military over there, and they're not running under the rule of the government. They're doing their own thing. So why would I negotiate with a group who has no power over what the real group is doing? So I thought that was actually a good point. Now, I don't know if he actually invited them to come to Camp David and come hang out like in Texas or whatever. That's wild if he did do that. But the negotiating part, I'm not against. I'm pro negotiations. You know what I'm saying? I'm pro speaking to other countries and figuring out how we can end violence, no matter what happened before. Otherwise, it'll never end. So I'm good with that. The issue of race came up. Trump says he doesn't care if she's black or not. She can be black if she wants to be, which I felt like was a funny line. But then Kamala proceeded to destroy Trump and break down his entire race record, highlighting the Central Park Five. Even after they were found not guilty of everything, he still was taking out newspaper articles and pressing the issue, basically saying, yo, we need y'all, we need them in prison, so, of course, the rental issues from the late 70s when him and his father were, not renting property to black people and other people of color, trying to keep the quote unquote undesirables out of his properties and out of his apartment buildings and things like that. So she broke them down, quite nicely. And that's how you need to break down Trump's race record. You can't break it down on some, because Republicans like him and a lot of Republicans are racist, therefore he's racist, or because he says, some of the stuff he says, it's like, clearly it's ignorant at minimum, you know what I mean? But is it like racist in the way that we mean racist, when it's like he hates people of, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't necessarily know if it's always that, but based on the things that he says, he might just be talking like out of his ass. You know what I mean? Like, everybody has said something to one degree or another that was, insensitive or, ignorant, like I said, or, any of those things. So I'm not necessarily only going to take what he says, even though I do pay attention to what he says. And I'm like, you know what I mean? But like, when you combine it with the actions, then it's like, oh, okay, I see what we're dealing with here. Like, when you're taking out full page ads after they're found not guilty and you continue to press the issue and say you want to see them dead anyway, and there's no reason for it, like outside of the fact that it was 5 black dudes and a white woman, like, that's racist. Like, I don't know how else you can really, you know what I'm saying? Like, because you wouldn't have ever done that with 5 white guys who were found not guilty of a crime. You would just let it go. You might have apologized to the family, especially if they have money. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's like, nah, there's some racial shit in your background, bro. Like, we can't do this whole Trump's not racist thing. Like, I don't like when people do that. You know, there's evidence of like both definitions of racism, like just bigotry, othering people, and then also like systemic racism of like inflicting your power to hold other racial groups down. There's evidence of both. Saying that he wants the police to have complete immunity, you know, when we know how much, you know, police shootings of unarmed black people were a big deal during his presidency. They should still be a big deal, but nobody talks about it anymore because there's a Democrat in charge. I digress. Obamacare. This is the part that disappointed me. So Trump said that Obamacare sucked, but he chose to save it and strengthen it because he wanted to abolish it, but nobody came to him with a better plan. So he felt like if he abolished it and didn't replace it with a better plan, then he would leave people worse off. So he didn't want to destroy it. Instead, he wanted to save it and strengthen it. These are his words. So then they asked him if he has a plan now. You know, it's been 4 years, bro. Like, do you have a plan now? And he says he has concepts of a plan, but he doesn't have a concrete plan. Kamala says that now they asked her, are you for Medicare for all? You said you were for Medicare for all in 2016 and in 2020. Are you for Medicare for all today? And she says that she is for private insurance, but wants to expand Obamacare. She didn't even mention Medicare for all. And that really upset me because that was actually, if you watch my previous video on Kamala, that's actually one of her strengths based on her record was her healthcare record. So the fact that she didn't even acknowledge the fact that they said Medicare for all, that hurt. That really, because that was one of the last things I was like, you know what? If I don't agree with her on all these other issues, at minimum, I can agree with her on healthcare. And now it doesn't seem like I can agree with her on healthcare either. And I'm like, damn, Kamala, what happened? I mean, I know what happened, but you know. Lastly, we have climate change. So climate change, Kamala says that they are investing in clean energy manufacturing jobs, and Trump lost those types of jobs during his presidency. But again, we kind of discussed earlier why the job situation was what it was under Trump. Trump also says that the Democrats are giving all of the manufacturing jobs over to China, and that his tariffs will also be on foreign cars, which would allow American car companies to, again, be produced and purchased domestically, which, you know, hopefully will, you know, do positive things for the economy over here. So at the end of the day, that was the debate. That's everything that they said. As you can see, again, they're not that different on the really, really, really important issues. On Israel, basically the same. On healthcare, Trump is probably in all likelihood just going to keep what we got because they don't have another plan for Obamacare. But Kamala, the lefty, didn't even mention Medicare for all. So that's very unfortunate. You know, but there are some differences on some fracking. They're both pro fracking. That's not good. If you're a climate change person, that's not good. The main difference between them on Ukraine, Trump is saying that we want to end that war. Kamala saying we'll keep funding. So Trump's actually better on that issue. On the economy, they're kind of a wash. Foreign policy. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. It's just not really anything to get excited about, unfortunately, when you're on the when you're a policy wonk such as myself and you want to see things actually happen and you don't really care what people say and you know what I'm saying, all that type of stuff. Like, it gets aggravating, but I'm here to cover it. So hopefully, if you didn't get a chance to watch the debate, I've given you all of the information regarding the debate that you need to know. Outside of that, I'll be around for the rest of this political season to see how it shapes out. I think I'm going to try to do a deep dive on Project 25 next week, and give my thoughts on it overall. Do I think it's another Russiagate type of deal, or do I think it's something real that we actually need to pay attention to? I'll let y'all know on the next episode. But until then, this is Shane G. This is Politics as Usual right here on the Ethos Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe for all of our latest content. And I'll catch you on the next one.